At my daughter's 9th birthday, my dad gave her a card that read, "To the one who tries her best but still fails." My sister snorted. I tore it in half and said, "This is the last gift you'll ever give her." Then my grandmother stood up, shaking with rage, and what she said made my mom drop her fork mid-bite. It was just after the cake, when things were still light and noisy and full of kid laughter, when my dad handed Olivia the card. He didn't even hand it to her directly. He slid it across the gift table like it was a bill he didn't want to pay, then stepped back and crossed his arms. Olivia smiled like she always does and picked it up. I was cutting another piece of cake when I heard Rachel snort. The kind of laugh she does when she's trying to hold back something mean but wants you to know she thought it anyway. I turned just in time to see Olivia standing still, card in hand, her expression unreadable. I walked over. She didn't look up. So I took the card and read it. "To the one who tries her best but still fails." That was it. No money. No joke. Not even signed. The room hadn't gone quiet exactly, but the air changed. A few people caught on that something had just shifted. I looked at my dad. He shrugged. Like he didn't see the problem. I ripped the card in half. Then again. I didn't yell. I just said it flatly. "This is the last gift you'll ever give her." I could see Rachel trying to keep a straight face, mouthing "Oh my God" like I was the dramatic one. My mom pretended to be surprised, but she didn't look it. And my dad? He looked smug. Like he'd done what he came to do. Like hurting a 9-year-old girl at her own party was some kind of victory. That's when my grandmother stood up. She'd been quiet the whole afternoon. Sitting near the window, not saying much but watching everything. She didn't use her cane this time. Just slowly pushed her chair back and stood up, hands steady, mouth tight. She reached into her bag and pulled out a small velvet pouch. Everyone noticed. The moment she held it up, the energy in the room completely shifted. "For her 9th birthday," she said, voice clear and even, "Olivia will receive the heirloom." It was like the room snapped in half. My mom's fork hit her plate with a loud metallic clink. Rachel stopped mid-laugh and stared like she'd misheard. My dad turned, narrowed his eyes but didn't say anything. Not yet. I felt my stomach twist. Not because I didn't want Olivia to have it, but because I knew what was coming. That pouch. It wasn't just jewelry. It was the jewelry. The set my grandmother kept in the bank, only taking it out once when I was 12 to show us. An antique emerald necklace and matching earrings from her mother's mother. Appraised at nearly $120,000, though honestly, it was probably worth more now. No one in the family had ever worn it. It was meant to go to the first great-granddaughter on her 9th birthday. That was the rule. But still, my mom had always assumed it would go through her. She thought Grandma would leave it in her will and that she'd decide when Olivia would get it. Not like this. Not so openly. Grandma turned to Olivia and said, "This belongs to you now." Silence. Then Rachel's voice cut through. Loud, sharp, and bitter. "You're giving your jewelry to that stupid little girl?" My jaw clenched. Olivia's eyes dropped to the floor. And just like that, the party was over. No more balloons. No more cake. No more pretending this family was anything but broken. I looked at my daughter, humiliated on her birthday. Looked at my father, arms crossed like he was bored. Looked at my sister, furious that the spotlight wasn't on her. And something in me snapped. They had no idea what they'd just started. I should have said something right then, but I didn't trust myself to speak. Rachel was still standing there, arms thrown up like she was the victim, yelling about how ridiculous this was. That Grandma was being manipulated. That it wasn't fair. That Olivia didn't even understand the value of what she was being given. She said Olivia would probably lose it in a sandbox. I saw red. My mother tried to jump in, saying we could talk about this after the party. Like we were all just a little overtired and the situation needed to be handled with grace. Grace. That's what she called it. Meanwhile, Olivia was sitting on the floor with her paper crown slipping off her head, trying not to cry in front of her friends. I looked at my dad. Still no expression. No apology. No sense of shame. Just watching. And Grandma? She stood tall beside Olivia and didn't move. The pouch was still in her hand. She hadn't handed it over yet. Rachel stepped forward. Said something about calling the family lawyer. Said Grandma was too old to be making big decisions like this. Said maybe it was time someone else handled her estate. That's when Grandma finally snapped. "I've watched all of you for decades," she said. And not one of you has earned what's inside this pouch, except that child. Rachel tried to laugh, but it came out cracked. Grandma wasn't done. She has more kindness than any of you had by her age. And she's the only one here who didn't ask for anything today. That's why she gets it. Silence again. Then my mom stood up. Mother, please don't do this in front of everyone. Grandma turned to her. You let him humiliate her. On her birthday. My mom didn't respond. Just looked at the floor. I walked over to Olivia. She looked up at me like she wasn't sure if she'd done something wrong. I crouched down and took her hand. You didn't fail, I said. They did. And then I turned to my grandmother. Give it to her. Grandma smiled. Not a sweet, doting smile. Something sharper. Like justice. She placed the pouch into Olivia's hands. Rachel muttered something about how she was going to contest it. That the jewelry belonged to the bloodline. Whatever that even meant. Then she stormed out. My dad said nothing. He walked into the kitchen, opened a beer from the fridge that wasn't his, and sat alone at the far table. My mom tried to patch things up, telling Olivia how beautiful she looked and how proud they all were. But it was too late. The damage was done. The card had said it all. And now the line had been crossed. Not just between my father and me, but between the generations. Between who we were, and who we weren't going to be anymore. And in that moment I realized something. I wasn't done. They thought this ended with the card. They had no idea. The party fizzled out not long after that. Parents grabbed coats, herded their kids out with awkward smiles, and rushed goodbyes. No one said much, but everyone felt it. The tension, the heat. The kind of scene people whisper about later in group chats and PTA corners. I stayed behind to clean up. Olivia sat at the table, holding the velvet pouch in both hands, staring at it like it might vanish if she blinked. Grandma sat next to her, patting her back gently. Rachel never came back. My dad didn't say goodbye. My mom left without looking me in the eye. I knew what was coming. I got the first text that night just after 10. Wait. You've manipulated her. You always were good at playing victim. But dragging grandma into it? Over jewelry? You're pathetic. Then another. That stuff wasn't even meant for Olivia. It was supposed to go through mom. You don't get to decide family legacy. She didn't stop there. By the next morning she'd called grandma's doctor. Left a voicemail suggesting cognitive concerns. Then she called my uncle in Arizona, trying to stir him into it. She even tried to rope in my ex-husband, who hasn't had a conversation longer than 5 minutes with Olivia in over a year. I knew what she was doing. He was starting a war. But here's the thing, she thought I'd play defense. I didn't. I went straight to grandma. I laid it all out. Told her what they were doing, what they were planning to do. She just listened, then nodded once and said, "Good. Then we won't wait." She handed me a folder she'd kept in her bottom drawer for years. I'd seen it once when I was a teenager, back when she was still talking about death like it was some far-off idea. Inside was everything. Her will. Her trust. Her contingency plans. And tucked in the back, a notarized letter dated 3 years ago, stating exactly what was to be done with the jewelry, should Olivia meet her 9th birthday with a clean and kind heart. Grandma's words. Not mine. It was already hers. There was nothing they could do. Unless they wanted to burn the whole family down trying. By Monday it was already happening. Rachel posted a long, cryptic Facebook status about betrayal and manipulation. My mother sent me an email with the subject line, "Disappointed," which included a paragraph about how I'd exploited a vulnerable moment for my own gain. But what they didn't know, not yet, was that I wasn't done. As that card? That awful, mean little sentence my dad wrote in it? I didn't throw all of it away. I kept a piece. Just enough. Because revenge wasn't going to be loud. It was going to be exact. By Thursday, Rachel was calling lawyers. She didn't have a case, but that didn't stop her. She wanted grandma declared mentally unfit, fast. Said she was worried about manipulation, that I was taking advantage of her condition. She forgot grandma still had all her faculties, and a memory like a steel trap. What none of them knew was that this had been a long time coming. After my daughter was born, grandma quietly updated her will. Not because of some tender moment, but because she'd seen how my father looked at Olivia, like she was inconvenient. Like she was already disappointing him by existing. That card he gave her? It wasn't new behavior. Just more public. And he picked the wrong audience. Grandma didn't waste time. She scheduled a video call with her attorney, a man in his 60s who'd known our family since before I was born. She signed updated documents on camera, holding up her ID, looking dead into the lens with that hard, steady stare of hers. The next day, the trust was finalized. The heirloom, plus several other surprises no one knew about, were transferred directly to Olivia's name. Not mine. Olivia's. Rachel didn't take the news well. She showed up at Grandma's house, uninvited, parked crooked across the lawn like she was ready for a fight. Grandma didn't let her in. She told her through the screen door, "If you want to see what betrayal looks like, go check your father's handwriting." Then she shut the door in her face. That night, I opened the small envelope Grandma handed me earlier in the week. She told me not to read it until I was ready. Inside was a note. Just a few lines. "If you ever decide to leave them behind, I'll come with you. You and Olivia. We'll start over." That was when it clicked. All this time I thought I was fighting to protect Olivia. But Grandma had been waiting for someone else to break the pattern. Not my mom. Not Rachel. Me. And it wasn't just about jewelry anymore. It was about finally cutting the cord on a family that had confused cruelty with tradition for too long. I pulled out the card again, the piece I kept. Just the part with the handwriting. "To the one who tries her best but still fails." I took a picture of it and saved it. Because I wasn't done. Not yet. And I knew exactly where to start. I didn't want a court battle. I didn't want a screaming match across the table. What I wanted was truth. The kind you couldn't spin, couldn't deny, couldn't wriggle out of. And I had it. My dad had always gotten away with things because he did them quietly. Comments behind closed doors. Pressure disguised as parenting. And every time he crossed the line, someone would say, "That's just how he is." But that card? That was written proof. He humiliated a 9-year-old girl. His granddaughter. In front of 30 witnesses. In his own handwriting. I started small. I shared a photo of the torn card on a private Facebook group. Just moms in the area, people I trusted. No names. No context. Just, "This was the birthday card my daughter got from her grandfather." Curious how other families might handle this. The comments came flooding in. Outrage. Disbelief. People were furious for Olivia. And then something unexpected happened. Someone messaged me privately. A woman I didn't know well, but who used to live on our street when I was little. She said, "That handwriting looks familiar." I asked what she meant. She sent back a photo. A decades-old note from my dad. Something he had written to her father after a dispute over property lines. Same handwriting. Same tone. Passive-aggressive and vicious, just hidden behind a thin layer of formality. Then more messages came. Quiet ones. Old neighbors. A former coworker of his. Even a cousin we hadn't seen in years. Everyone had a story. Everyone had something. This man had spent a lifetime acting like a bully behind closed doors, confident that no one would ever connect the dots. Now they were connecting. I printed the stories. Dozens. I clipped the card fragment to the front and made a copy for Grandma, just so she'd see the proof that it wasn't just her who'd been worn down over the years. I mailed another copy to my mom. No letter. No return address. Just the card, the handwriting, and the stories. I waited. By the weekend, Rachel posted a quote about snakes in the grass and family traitors on Instagram. By Monday, my mom showed up at my door. No warning. No apology. Just stood there holding the envelope. She didn't come inside. She looked tired. Older. She said, "I didn't know." And I said, "You did. You just didn't want to deal with it." She didn't argue. She just said, "I want to help now. Whatever comes next." I didn't say yes. But I didn't say no either. Because what came next was already in motion. And they had no idea how far I was willing to go. It took 2 weeks to line everything up. Olivia went to school like normal. Grandma stayed with us, pretending like nothing had changed. But behind the scenes I was making calls. Changing bank accounts. Breaking the lease. I hadn't told anyone yet. Not even Olivia. I wanted everything to be ready before I said the words out loud. Because once I did, there'd be no going back. I picked a Sunday morning. Olivia was in the kitchen with Grandma flipping pancakes. I sat them both down and told them we were leaving. Not just the house. Not just the city. The state. A fresh start. Somewhere warm. Somewhere quiet. Somewhere none of them, Not my dad, not Rachel, not the people who stood by while he poisoned everything, could touch us. Grandma didn't hesitate. She just nodded and said, "Good." She had already sold the small property she'd inherited years ago. Quietly. It had sat empty forever, and she said it always felt like a backup plan. Now it was the plan. We were moving into a paid-off house with money to spare. 3 days before we left, my father showed up at the door. I hadn't seen him since the party. I didn't invite him in. He said, "This is how you want to end things?" I said, "No. This is how you ended them." He looked past me, trying to catch a glimpse of Olivia, but I stepped in the way. He opened his mouth like he was going to argue, then stopped. For the first time in my life, he didn't say anything. He just walked away. I closed the door and locked it. That night, I boxed up the last of Olivia's things. The velvet pouch went into her backpack, the one she wanted to carry on the plane herself. Rachel didn't say a word. My mother called once, then again, and I finally answered. She asked if we were really going through with it. I said yes. She cried a little, quietly, then told me she understood. She said she wanted to visit someday. I didn't promise anything. The flight was early. Olivia was nervous but excited. Grandma wore her old wool coat even though we were flying south. She said it reminded her of strength. And as the plane lifted off, I looked out the window. I didn't feel guilt. I didn't feel fear. I felt free. Because when you spend your whole life trying your best for people who want you to fail, leaving isn't running. It's winning. And we did. And we did.